right, everyone, welcome back from lunch. Thank you for joining the second session of the Nature Summit. My name is Matt Tranchin. I serve as the chairman of Global Resilience Partners. It is, coming out of the morning session, obviously we had the privilege of hearing from innovators, government officials, multilateral institutions, philanthropists. But it was really during lunch that the magic was happening. And this idea of connecting the dots, building relationships, key partnerships, really was at the heart of the remarks given last night by our host, Ambassador Greg Houston from the UK Embassy here in Panama. He, of course, graciously hosted us to kick things off in the proper way, building the kinds of relationships that have only deepened throughout the day today. And so we thought it'd be fitting to have Ambassador Houston kick off our afternoon session of the Nature Summit. Please join me in welcoming Ambassador Houston.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you again for inviting me here. Thank you for all of you who attended last night, and I had some fabulous and interesting, revealing, surprising conversations with many of you, and that's precisely why this Nature Summit is so important, because we were having discussions about some of the fabulous pilot projects from engineering through to blockchain, right the way through to reforestation. It was a real kind of a range of different ideas and different energy that you had in the room last night. And I said to many of you that I really wanted to learn and I wanted to come along and listen. And I think some of you thought, nah, I won't. Well, here I am. Not only am I here, but I've also been given a badge. So it's all official. It's all official with the Nature Summit. So I'm here to support you. To thank you again for taking the time from busy days, busy agendas that you have at home to come together and to look at some of these pilot projects that you're working on and to connect and to bring together some of these fabulous, fantastic ideas. And I'm very much in the market for these ideas, which is why I'm here and my team are here. We had a couple of projects over the course of the last couple of years. One which some of you saw in the garden last night about mangroves and how we're helping to reforest the mangroves and capture some of that carbon. You'll be pleased to know they did manage to remove the museum from the garden. It was quite noisy. It was quite risky at points, but they managed it and no one was injured. But so that project, which some of you have seen already, and then also we have another project which we've been working with Josh and the Smithsonian with Agua Salud, looking at reforestation with the Comarca here, the Novi Bugli Comarca, the indigenous community, which is something that I'm very proud that we've been working with. And so I'm here, like you all, I'm here for ideas. I'm here to look at what we can do, what's cutting edge, and where we as the United Kingdom can help bring forward where you've got possible solutions and you're using science and you're bringing the science in to really back up some of this energy and enthusiasm that you have. So really looking forward to listening to you all about restoration methods and the discussion that you're about to have and continue to have going forward. So I'm going to stop talking because I think you're not really here to listen to me, you're here to listen to the experts. But thank you all again.
Thank you, Ambassador. It's as we transition to the second session of the day, of course, we're here alongside the UNCCD, and land degradation is, of course, the primary focus, which is why it's so exciting that we can kick off this next moderated conversation with Louise Whitening, who is a land and water officer with FAO. For those of you who don't know, FAO is a juggernaut in this space. They have projects and partnerships in over 190 countries, an annual budget of over $4 billion, They're deploying resources and scaling the kind of proven solutions at the heart of why governments from around the world have descended upon Panama to identify those proven solutions that must be scaled. She'll be moderating a conversation with Joshua Tewksbury, of course, director of the Smithsonian Institute, and Javier Martinez, mitigation officer with Mi Ambiente, of course, the host of the Nature Summit. Please join me in welcoming these distinguished panelists.
Okay, you can be in the middle. Everything. Let's tighten this. You like to set her on stage.
Thank you, Matt. That was a very glowing report of FAO. Never heard it quite like that before. As Matt said, we're going to be switching now to talk a little bit about restoration, reforestation with native species, of course. Maybe I'll just get you to both introduce yourselves very briefly, and then we'll go into the questions. We can start with you, Josh.
It's great to be here. My name is Josh Tewksbury. I'm the director of the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute. We've been in Panama for about a century, and I'm mostly working on tropical forests, and then over the last 30 or 40 years also working in tropical oceans. So super happy to be here, and I'll just leave it there.
Thank you. My name is Javier Martinez. I'm the head of the mitigation department. I'm in charge of the national GHG inventory and also of the carbon market process in Panama. So I'm going to leave it there. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what I would like to focus on today is really practical ideas and suggestions you both have from your, I'm sure, many decades of experience in what works and specifically what can help take things to scale, because the world is littered with reforestation projects, with all sorts of development projects that really just stop when the project funding stops. How can we take things to scale? How can we embed them with governments? So Josh, starting with you, under what ecological and social conditions does natural regeneration yield the strongest results? And by results, I mean regulating the hydrological cycle, improving soil carbon and soil recovery, and biodiversity.
Yeah, it's a great question. I really like your lead, because the question is not how do we restore landscapes, but how do we restore landscapes at scale? And I think we know a lot about how to plant trees. There are many, many trees we don't know how to plant. There are many other trees we don't even know how to propagate. So it's not as if the science of restoration is finished or will be finished in the near term. But what we do know now about native forests throughout the tropics is enough to get started at scale today. But that work isn't generally happening because we default to the very few species that have market value in other parts of the world, and we often plant them off-site, which is essentially poorly planted, and that has devastating consequences for the biodiversity, for the livelihoods, and for the regeneration and the carbon accrual at the same time. So there's a huge amount of work to do to just understand where you put what tree for what reason, and then building back from that how to scale that. So even once you understand it, going from a prototype to thousands of hectares it requires essentially de-risking that marketplace. So I think there are two answers to your question. One is the technical knowledge that needs to get into the right hands to scale. Right now it's mostly in the science community, and it's not pushing out in an extension service globally like it needs to. Some of that's being happening here. I think we're probably leading in that to some extent in Panama. Many tropical countries do not have that capacity. And then there's the scaling aspect of it, which is de-risking this marketplace, creating structures in which investment can be sure that when they invest, that what they're investing in will provide returns. Returns in terms of carbon, returns in terms of impact. That's also doable, but that's about understanding where carbon is, understanding the ecosystem of ecosystem services and how they change with interventions, and then creating a trust environment where independent actors like the Smithsonian and others can come in and articulate the value of intervention in a consistent, regularized way all across the world, so that actors can play their part in investing, in implementing, and in creating value for the society. I think both of those are super key. I could talk more about it, but I'll stop there.
Great, thank you. And just a positive fact, and anyone who's flown in here will know that Panama has some of the highest rates of intact forest in the region, which is great. And as someone who lives here and came from a mega city in Asia, I really appreciate it. But Josh, one last question for you. How do forest conservation and target restoration of degraded lands maintain corridors, preserve water, preserve water sources, and reinforce national climate mitigation commitments?
Well, I mean, there are two strategies. Like, I guess I would start by saying that forests and our understanding of forests are the most scalable technology for combating climate change that we have. Like, full stop. There is no other technology that scales at the scale that planting and maintaining forests has. 99.9% of the carbon dioxide removal we do today is simply planting trees or keeping them from being cut down. That's the technology. And yet, we're doing that at about 1/3 the rate we need to keep this world within 1.5 degrees warming. So we know how to do it. We're not implementing at scale yet. And implementing at scale comes with all sorts of really interesting social challenges, of course, because as soon as you create markets like we're trying to do here in Panama, you also have to figure out who's going to game those markets, who's going to lean into those markets, and what the social consequences are for the people who are on that land. Forests are not a global commons. Forests are owned and operated on by a really diverse set of actors. So the question is about, like, how do we, like we can say in Panama we've got about 15 million measurements of trees in the country right now, and we can say that our regenerating tropical forests, just letting them regenerate with native species, puts about 6.9 hectares of carbon, put 6.9 tons of carbon per hectare on the land every year, 10 or 11 tons if you count below ground carbon. Truthfully, no one's even counting below ground carbon in any carbon market of the world right now. So we're leaving out a lot of the impact of good work simply because we don't know how to count it at scale. Solvable problem needs to be scaled. Once it's scaled, you create the incentive structure for people to act in their own interests and in the interest of the planet, and you do it at scale. So I think we know a lot of the technology. A lot of it's about getting it out to the right places, recognize and building trust in the marketplace, building uniformity in the marketplace so that these technologies can scale.
Sounds like Panama is well placed to play a leading role, not just in this region, but globally. Okay, Javier, now turning to you and to implementation and what works on the ground. What has Panama learned in terms of practices that ensure the long-term survival of regenerated or reforested areas?
Thanks for the question. I really like what my colleague Joshua said about it's really important to think about the person that live in the forest and that live close by the forest. So let's say we have like different approaches of it. For example, right now, like the next month is our dry season, and we have to give our fire permits. So we have like all our regulations, how that works. Also, we like to promote like sustainable practices. For example, the fencing in our agriculture areas too, and using live fences, and also protecting our riparian zones. Many of our riparian zones are close to cattle. So how you manage to, and how you talk with the farmer to protect that forest, that it's giving them the water that they can use and they should use for their livelihoods, right? So I think a really important thing for us is think about how we can involve the community and how they can engage and how they can empower in the project, because it's easy to go to a place and say, this is the solution you need. But if they don't feel like it, and if you don't work with them, they will not do it. Like the moment you go from that community, they will stop doing it because they don't feel like it belongs to them. So it's really interesting, for example, when you talk with the community and they're saying like, yeah, we have live fencing right now. But for example, if you have a neighbor, you have like this kind of a deal that it's a 50-50 team. We both, let's say, keep the fencing together and stuff, and see how all these, let's say, traditional and practice and culture they have, and how you can change it. Because in Panama, in our countryside, it's really common the slash and burn practice, but how you convince them to say that's not the way you should do it, and how you can convince them that there's a really short-term benefits that they could benefit from. So basically, I'm thinking that it's about how you engage the community in the project, and and independently what kind of project it is, silvopasture, agroforestry, it would work if they feel like it's part of what they are doing.
Thank you. So, Yeah, I think you could say that communities have to be involved, but sometimes projects stop there. They also have to see how they're going to make more money, how their lives are going to get better. It does often come down to that, is what we see. So now move to an area that's quite close to FAO's heart, because it's about how can we have production and food security and livelihoods with dignity within these landscapes that are also healthier and being restored. So in Panama, in your experience, where are producers adopting these kind of practices, like you mentioned, agroforestry, silvopastoral, and most successfully, and what incentives in terms of technical support, the policy environment, or incentives are required to incentivize adoption?
Thanks for the question. I think that, for example, there's a really good example in a province in Panama. It's called Los Santos. They have like this silvopasture project that it shows that 1 hectare of the silvopasture yields profit similar to 3 hectares of a traditional pasture. So the really hard part of that was trying to convince them of the, let's say, the potential it have. Like it's good for the cattle. It will produce even more. It will also improve the water availability you will have in order to produce and everything you need to do within your context. So there's also the biodiversity gains you have, because people really like see the birds and stuff. So you can kind of mix in like the beauty of the scenery with how you produce your stuff. And that's also a way like people start thinking like I should protect this too, because it's not also helping me how I produce things, but it's also making this place like a really beautiful, enjoyable place, right? So I think that the things we need to, let's say, to scale up all this kind of projects, it's certainly technical assistance is always needed, especially when you're talking with the producers and the farmers, because it's not about just planting a tree, right? It's about how which tree are you planting for which reasons, and if they make sense to them, right? So there are financial incentives that are also part of the scheme we're planning. That's why we're planning we launched our executive decree on carbon markets, and we have like this part of share of benefits that we want to regulate to ensure that the community will take let's say profits or advantage of the projects that are going on in their place. Also, I think something that really works is when you demonstrate something. Like if you see that your neighbor is doing that and he's doing good, then you're thinking, I should do that too. Like there's an opportunity in there that I could also have it. And basically, let's say, if they know that it's a long-term financing, like if you know that it's a predictable financing, or where you can go to finance, if there's credits and stuff, it will be easier. That's why we're also working with banking in our green taxonomy to include all these kind of sectors and to, let's say, promote these green practices in different levels. So I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah, thanks.
Great. Sure.
Jump in on
It's a
that.
conversation.
No, it's a super important. I really like what you were saying. I just want to tell, like, I want to just another example of that work. So, Greg was talking about the work that we're doing with the British government and with a lot of other partners in the Bule communities in the Comarcas and Chiriquí. And that project is really about planting the forests of the future. Literally, because we don't know what the forest of the past looked like. It seems like obviously, but it is, much of that landscape has been denuded of trees for so long that actually reconstructing what was there, one, doesn't make cultural sense because there's not a cultural history of that forest. Two, it doesn't make ecological sense because the climate is changing as we move forward, and the needs of the communities are changing as well. What they want those trees for is different than what it was before. So so building the relationship with the communities and saying, what do you want a forest for? Why do you want a forest? What are your values? And it turns out it's as much about native bees as it is about forest timber. It's about building houses that you can live in that are tall enough for your children to grow up in. All of the aspects that we take for granted in how we build are a part of the landscape in that community. And so working with them to not just plant 5 trees or 6 tree species, but a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen species. Tell us what works. Tell us what grows. Let's find out together, and then let's keep planting that. And that project has led to donors and others coming in saying, let's scale this. You guys have done the science, enough of the science. That's fine. Let's get it to scale. Let's go from 3 communities to 30 communities, from 30 communities to 3,000 communities. Like, let's get all of this. Let's really think big about reforestation within the most valuable landscapes that Panama has, most of which are in indigenous control in the comarcas. And those communities need to be engaged in the process from the start. We walked hundreds of miles to gain the trust to be able to do this project. And that's the way you should do it, because it's their landscapes, their futures that we're being invited in to support their decision process. And scaling is still doable with that trust process, because as you said, it's one community telling another, it's one neighbor telling another, it's showing what works, it's building that process forward, and that's how it spreads. It's not through us spreading it by any means, right? So I think there are examples in Panama where we can show how this can work and how it can scale.
Can I just ask one follow-up question there? You mentioned the donors will come in. Do you find that the donor landscape is still quite fragmented, or are they starting to coalesce around what the country actually wants and needs? And are there any solutions there? Because, I mean, I come from a donor agency, and I do feel like there's quite a few of us. And sometimes we compete rather than work together.
I can, like, from the government perspective, I think it's about the strategizing of what are you receiving, right? For example, if you want to have a big impact in an area, and you know that the money is finite, right? Then you need to strategize how you use that money, and how to prioritize things that the place needs. So it's about with who I'm doing what, and with that money, what I'm going to do, right? It's more about thinking how put all the actors in there and how to make a big picture of different parts of the same puzzle, but with different pieces. Does that make sense? And that's how we work in our office, like trying to get together many different donors with different perspectives with one same goal, right?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, but I would to just be very pointed in an answer. The answer is no, it's very fragmented. Like, and I know that you probably feel the same thing, that you get people coming into this country who come in with no knowledge of the communities in the country and have massive plans to do great work. And you just can see this train wreck unfolding. And you're like, I'd like to help, but this is not going to work out well for you. Like, you don't know the communities, you don't know the landscapes, you haven't even talked to the ambiente, you don't even know what the rules are, and you're going to solve climate change in this problem, in this country. Not going to work, right? And like, that has happened. I mean, I've been here about 4.5 years. I think that's happened 10 times in that amount of times. Groups have come in and said, let's work together. I want to put your logo on what we're doing, and it'll be STRI associated, and then we'll do great things together. And it's like, you don't even know where to start. And sometimes we don't know where to start either, but at least we have the humility to recognize it and then go and find those answers and work with others and figure out who's doing good work in a region, build their capacity, and support change. I think there's a whole bunch of humility in the donor community that has to sort of rise up to be able to create the connectivity that will create lasting long-term change. This isn't quick fix work, but it's consistent. So it's consistent work that requires urgency to think at scale, even though it's hard, right? I think some of the more sophisticated donors are recognizing that. So I think there's definitely hope in this space, but I still think it's really fragmented.
Lucky to get your logo sometimes. But what I really like is when governments are assertive and they know what they want. Panama is one, but you can't expect that in a country like Haiti, which is where we have a lot of work and a lot of actions going on. So, yes, something to think about from our side as well. Okay, we're going to finish with a lightning round. Is that okay? This is a bit unfair, but just a couple of sentences each. If you could try and, I think I know what you might say, but crystallize down one critical factor that determines either the success or failure of these sorts of reforestation, landscape restoration agreements, what would it be? Maybe Javier.
Definitely, I really love what you said about the future of the forest of the future, about how they imagine it, because the adoption of it depends on people, right? So the adoption of the success of this kind of projects, it's definitely on people, because you need to think about how it becomes part of the livelihoods of them and how it will benefit from them. So basically, that's my word. It depends on the people. Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the word I'd use is leadership. Leadership at local levels, leadership at government levels, leadership in the private sector, leadership in civil society, coupled with humility and a recognition that you don't have all the answers, and the urgency of the moment. If you can get leadership, humility, and urgency in one room, you can create change, and you can move really fast. And actually, I think that's the moment Panama is in right now, is the ability to do that.
Love that. Very positive way to end. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise, for moderating that conversation. And of course, thank you, Joshua. Thank you, Javier. Part of the Nature Summit, obviously, is showcasing the kind of nature-based leadership here in Panama, which was on full display in the previous session. But another part of it is identifying those scalable solutions and innovators from around the world that we've brought to Panama to showcase. Not just showcase what they're doing now, but showcase what they're in a position to do with the strategic partnerships that can be built in this room. So with that, I would love for our next panelist to join us. Alexandra Tully is the Director of Strategic Projects for Inventwood. Alexandra, thank you for coming to the stage.
Because I have props potentially.
Oh, what a tease. So Alexandra, Inventwood, I've become accustomed when introducing your company and your product, Superwood, is that you all have created a wood-based product that is stronger, lighter, and less expensive than steel. Please give the behind-the-scenes story of the company behind the product, Inventwood. And I know this is, there was recently a whole expose feature highlighting the company in the Wall Street Journal that has generated a tremendous amount of press and attention. But this is a company that's actually been around for nearly a decade. Please tell us how it started, how it got to where it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for having me here, having our company here. Truly, like you and everybody else who has put so much effort into putting together the Nature Summit, just done a wonderful job. There's a lot of really amazing people in the room and really interesting conversations thus far. So thank you, truly. So you've heard the spiel and you gave it relative to Inventwood in the one-liner. Inventwood is a company that can take any sort of woody feedstock that you can think of, including types of timber, shrubbery, bamboo, and convert it into a material that is capable of displacing steel and concrete. So from a material properties perspective, we make this material called Superwood, and Superwood is stronger than steel, it's lighter than steel. I would caveat your other comment and say it is capable of being cheaper than steel. And it's also fireproof, it's waterproof, it's termite proof. It's pretty impressive technology. And a big part of that is it has to do with where it came from, to answer your question, and it's part of the reason that we have existed for as long as we have. So Superwood was invented back in around 2016 by Dr. Liang-Bing Hu, who is now out of Yale University. And he actually has a background in carbon fiber technology and batteries. And was looking at cellulose in a scanning electron microscope at one point. Sorry, my physics background is coming out here, guys. And noticed that the structure of cellulose was really reminiscent of carbon fiber. And carbon fiber, as I'm sure everyone here knows, is incredibly strong. So he went on this journey to try to determine how best to harness the strength of cellulose, and superwood is what he came up with. But we all hear about technologies coming out of the lab. It's incredibly exciting. Academia is remarkable in that way, but it's a whole different ballgame to try to scale that and determine whether or not the technology is capable of being scalable, both from a material properties perspective, but also from a cost perspective. And so from 2016 up until now, we've been, the company, I haven't been with them this entire time, but has been on that journey. And with the significant support of the previous U.S. government administration and a $20 million grant that enabled us to prove out the technology and build our first manufacturing facility, we're at the point now where we can say, yes, it's scalable.
You know, and I think that's it's an interesting point because, you know, part of the framework of the Nature Summit built alongside these 3 UN conventions is also this idea of convening the public, private, philanthropic sector and leveraging their respective strengths.
Mm-hmm.
You know, governments can't innovate, but they can scale. You know, philanthropy is not in a position to scale, but it can de-risk investments,
Mm-hmm.
get funding off the sideline. And of course, the private sector, from an innovation standpoint, building business models that are inherently scalable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you mentioned the previous U.S. administration it was $100 million grants that they gave out to those sustainable solutions that they were betting on represented the scalable impact at the heart of why the grants were being deployed. And Inventwood received 20% of that, $20 million to jumpstart it. Right now, as a company, of course, there are stages of development.
Mm-hmm.
Primary focus, exteriors and interiors. Is that what is the focus now as the product is beginning to come off the conveyor belt, so to say?
It's such an interesting question because from a commercial perspective, targeting exteriors, like cladding type material, decking, and interior wall paneling, things of that sort, furniture, all of that makes sense. And to be truthful, even looking at those markets from a demand perspective, I mean, you highlighted the recent Wall Street Journal article. There have been a number of articles. There's a lot of inbound. From a demand perspective, we have more demand than we could ever fill out of our current manufacturing facility or the next, even just for those particular applications. But as a company, everybody at the core of this organization has been focused on structural materials from the beginning, because that's where the greatest impact lies. The ability for us to actually take this material and build with it, make columns, beams, floors, to build whatever structure is required by the people in a particular location, because that's going to be different every place you go in the world. That's really what the vision of the company is. That's what drives us. And so, I mean, on a practical note, we are already in significant ongoing conversations with a number of, mass timber, of the foremost mass timber and hybrid engineering firms from around the world, thinking about how to start implementing superwood when the time comes. It's a long journey.
Well, and talking obviously companies based in the U.S.
Yeah.
First plant is in Virginia, Maryland.
Maryland, Frederick, Maryland.
But of course the trajectory of the company is global.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing to note, the first Nature Summit, your colleague was here with the ambassador for the Kingdom of Tonga, and they were highlighting the partnership that had actually been established between Inventwood and the Kingdom of Tonga. For those of you who don't know, Tonga suffered significant devastation from tsunamis a couple years ago, and are in the process now of really rebuilding that front lines infrastructure. And so the partnership between Tonga and InventWood is really focused on building the kinds of infrastructure that leverages the strength and the resilience at the heart of superwood. Tonga, of course, I imagine is not the most commercially lucrative opportunity all around the world, but it speaks to the ethos of the company that you would dedicate the bandwidth, the capacity, of resources of prioritizing that as a project. But looking out around the world, I'm curious, what makes the right strategic partner for InventWood that you're looking for to determine, where you're going to build your next international plant, and with the idea of there's, of course, several people in this room, whether they be investors or philanthropists or government officials. I'm curious, what checks all the boxes that you all are looking for?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So one of the things that I respect most about InventWood as a company and the people that comprise it is the dedication to building the right team. This, and to a large extent, that's all based on the foundational technology as well. That's kind of the driving factor. That's what motivates. It's what has motivated titans of the industry to come over and work with us and help guide us at this point, truly in exchange, essentially, for the promise of this technology. But the team and the company has, as we've scaled, just worked very hard to ensure that everybody we bring on board and everybody we work with takes a multifaceted view to how superwood can be utilized throughout the world and understands the benefits associated with it, also understands the nuances associated with it, recognizes that we internally don't necessarily have all of the answers, particularly when we think about using it globally. We just know that the technology is compatible globally. So when we think about partnerships at this point, we're looking not only for partners, to your point, we're looking for the right partners, and that might look like whether that's family offices that are interested in beginning to work with us at this stage when we're really right at the precipice of significant scaling beyond our initial manufacturing facilities. That might be larger organizations who are interested in joint development projects and thinking a little bit longer term on that front. That might be countries who are interested in are considering building manufacturing facilities there going forward. But those are conversations that need to be had kind of on a case-by-case basis, because that's how seriously we as an organization take them.
Well, I want to end this, of course, with following through on your tease of a potential prop in your bag. So what do you have in there?
I have superwood in here, obviously.
That's amazing.
But also, before we wrap, so I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because clearly we're friendly, know, InventWood.
Yep.
But so here, if you'd like, I don't.
Yes. And if I break it, I get to keep it. That's the deal.
That's the deal. Yeah. Absolutely. So we make 16-foot long boards, but I can't fit those in my purse. So these are offcuts. But you've seen a lot of companies and technologies around the world and come and go to some degree, and so I'm curious at this stage, what really strikes you about InventWood, and also what outstanding and remaining questions you have, genuinely, what are you curious about still?
Sure. Well, actually, it's an easy question of why InventWood stood out to me. So I first came across InventWood actually at EarthX, and we have the founder and chairman of EarthX, Trammell Crow, who's here with us today. And I met your colleague in the lobby, who I knew from another lifetime, another company ago. And he was telling me about this product, and I was intrigued. And at the time, we had the Prime Minister of Tonga, who was visiting EarthX. And I said, well, this sounds interesting. I'd love to make a connection and see if there's a potential alignment. And it was seeing how the Prime Minister and his team responded to InventWood and the promise of InventWood. That's when I really began to understand the power of what it represented to the front lines, to those communities that frankly have too few resources and are struggling to build the resilient infrastructure needed to meet storms and natural disasters that are only more frequent and only growing stronger. And I thought, if this is a solution for the front lines, this could be a solution for the entire world. And I've been following y'all's journey ever since.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to hear that, for sure.
Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Deal. Here you go. All right. Now for our next panel. This is fitting. This is why we're all here. This is a panel really to put a spotlight on the Nature Pledge. We are going to take a deep dive with some key leaders, of course, represented by the Panamanian government, but this conversation will be led by Jessica Young. UNDP, is Jessica in the house? Amazing. Hey, Jessica. Jessica's going to be moderating a conversation with Anna Aguilar. Anna, are you here? All right, Anna. Anna is the Director of Climate for Mi Ambiente, lead negotiator at COP30, and she'll be joined by John Scholl, co-founder for Eco Restoration Alliance. Hey, John. So please join me in welcoming Jessica, Anna, and John to the stage.
Hola. Well, hello. Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here joining you in this conversation that we hope will be like, I was saying, it's almost like a TikTok in 3 parts because they want us to be like super quick and very innovative and go to the point. So on that, I was just thinking before starting this panel about like the whole attention these conventions have like captured nowadays. And I want just to remind us like the most simple question, what is first? Chicken or the egg, or the hen or the egg? Like, we have to remember that legislation, laws, and conventions are means to transform. So they're not the outcomes. They are there because they are tools and mechanisms. So starting from that, I just wanted to open this conversation with you, remembering, like, I like this anecdote. It's about this book that it was published in 1962 by Rachel Carson about the spring, silent spring. What I like about this anecdote is not the book itself. It's about all the fuss that was developed on the media. You can find these videos on YouTube when these scientists started to observe that there were less insects in her garden, in her backyard. So she started to study more about what is what's going on, and it was about the use of chemicals and pesticides to produce thousands of food, but because employment was needed. So this produced an avalanche of public policies, and in the media, there were a lot of discussions. And there's one guy, one presenter, a journalist, I guess, in this, well, at that time, imagine 1960 something, a guy saying, this is outrageous. I mean, who is this woman? What, I mean, a woman, you know, like, what is she doing? And we have to fight our food with more than 3,000 insects. There are worms in our apples. So that's how we started to talk globally on the importance of try to work more articulated, more holistic into development, the necessity of economic growth, livelihoods, the importance of have people, human beings in the center, and the discussions about what is the meaning of sustainable development. So more than 30 years ago, because I like when Juan Carlos mentioned like 30 years ago in the Rio, but imagine this is 60 years ago, they started to think, how can we work more systemically? How can we break the silos and work beyond projects, more in a portfolio approach? So we are here to try to understand what is it that Panama is doing as an innovative governance, putting this nature pledge together to try precisely to articulate 60 years later, because as was mentioned a few days ago, we haven't like made our homework. Like we're still in a planetary and triple crisis because the biodiversity loss, climate change, and of course, land degradation, but also consumption and production. So I want to hear from you, Anna, if you can please share with us about Nature Pledge and what is it that Panama is championing. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you also for being here. Yeah, basically, I think one more question is why not? Why not? Why it hasn't happened before? I think that should be the first question. Why we have been following this fragmented world for so long? Why we have been 30 years or more working on this fragmented world, in this fragmented system, I will say. And it was very good to hear the previous panels, because that's what a person with two fingers in front that actually is entirely bound by the normal conventions and have this thinking outside the box say. And that was the question that the Minister Navarro asked himself when he started this whole journey. Why we have to produce 8 reports and per convention? And I know you have heard, if you have been here in the Nature Summits, you know these type of lines. But it is the reason is because people do not understand it, even inside the ministry. It is quite difficult for people to actually get what is to not follow what everyone is doing. And it is easier just to take stuff and do not do some critical thinking about why we're doing it. So that's basically what the Nature Pledge, Nature Summit, Nature Everything, we are trying to do. And I don't know, I will just answer because I want to answer your question. It is basically Nature Pledge. It is also part of the Nature Summit, it's a part of everything. It is just to have that coherence. And it combines the commitments that we have to make for Rio, for all 3 Rio conventions, but also we are looking a bit ahead. Minister of Environment, the ministry also looks into plastics, looks into ocean, and all of these things are interlinked. So why not now? What is not Nature Pledge? It's also very important. It is not a promise. It's something that we have put a lot of technical hours thinking about how we can make it work. Yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you, Anna. Super interesting. That gets me to John, because now I'm like paying attention on these, like the reports, the indicators, the conference of the parties, and etc. But beyond that, and we're thinking on how to pay more attention on the local solutions and the alliances and like how to move from the pledge to action, how to accelerate the transformation. So, and I understand you have a lot of experience on this. If you can share a little bit on this. And of course, talk about the ecosystem we were talking before, like
Yes, of
how
course,
these
of
systems
course.
need to be all interlinked.
I think what's really interesting about what Anna said and about the Nature Pledge is that we're saying, look, it's not we don't have 5 problems. We don't have 45 reports. We have one problem, and we're going to consolidate that. Now, the real promise there is that it's not just that you're consolidating the reports, it's that you're recognizing that it's not 5 fingertips, it's a whole hand. There's the physiology of a whole system. I think that this understanding that the living planet is like a family member. It is a family member. It's part of our family, and it's one system. Creates the opportunity for people to say, wait a minute, someone in my family needs support, and what can I do? And that attitude is very, very different from what happens when you're checked into a hospital and they say, look, we've got all of these tests and all of these instruments and all of this technology, and by the way, here's a really big bill that we've managed to automate a system for. The machinery of healthcare is very different from caring about the health of a family member. And that's really the critical opportunity. The planet is a big place. The patient is sick, but it's covered by people. And if everyone on the planet and if everyone in Panama recognizes that the only solution to this problem is to take responsibility for a particular patch of land that you have access to. And not just, when I say land, I don't mean dirt. I mean water and soil and vegetation and animals and atmosphere and clouds, which makes the rain, which feeds the whole system, and by the way, supports the canal. When we recognize that that entire system needs to be understood locally, and when we create financial and psychological incentives so that people can say, okay, I know what needs to be done because I'm paying attention, and I can sustain myself by doing it, we will have broken through. But until we do that, we're going to continue to have lots of pieces of the puzzles, lots of people who are trying to do the right thing, but we may be focusing on, for example, just carbon, when it's not just carbon. It's carbon and plastics and pesticides and water and precipitation and economics and sociology. It's one living system.
It's more like an integrated approach. So that comes like to my mind now, and Anna, getting back to you. Like, yes, we get that everything interlinked. Like, for example, we know that climate change can exacerbate biodiversity loss, that land degradation can affect and impact resilience from communities. But how do we break these silos? It's some fragmentation. I like that yesterday night and this afternoon, people recognizes that we are working more in silos. And I have to mention again the Rio Convention because it was not meant to be like that. Of course, the accelerated way we produce and consume, again, makes the crisis go like faster, like really in a speedy way, versus the time that takes the processes to implement in a more effective way, and also to measure the effectiveness of these kind of treaties. So, Anna, in these matters, breaking silos and trying to implement in a more effective way, because as you're saying, this is not a pledge, this is something that you want to use to accelerate the impact and the transformations in the country. But I have to say, and this is incredible to have the Minister of Environment with this such like leadership that you're showing, but where are the rest of the ministers? So if you don't want to be sectorial and you don't want to be like from just a silo perspective, how is it that you see the way to move forward?
Yeah, this is also a very good question, because right now we have completed the exercise of this pledge. But how we can take it to implementation, that's a whole different history. We have identified at least 4 main levelers, pillars that we need, that we have to achieve in order to get it right, to get it done. One of them, of course, is finance. And that's also why we created the Nature Summit. It is part of this whole narrative, because we also understand that we also have to get those champions, those people, those investors. The private sector needs to keep doing what they are good at. We just, as government, we need to give them signals. We need to give them where they should, where is a good place, where the government is going, some clarity, some transparency. But that won't be the stop, the end of it, but it will give continuity even after we have done the entire, even when this government period is finished. Also, we make a promise during this, something very personal right now is that Juan Carlos Monterrey and myself, we started working together 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago now, I just used 10. But in that moment, we were doing what the technical people do and just following instructions because we were learning. But now I think one of the promises that we want to make to ourselves is we are not going to be chasing the money, but we are going to work on real solutions that can actually work. And that per se is a shift of mentality, because we'll make the money happens, but it has to follow what we want to solve. And that is one. Finance is key, but not just at philanthropy level or private sector level, but also at our own administration, and we're in the ministry working with partners. And so we are going to set what we need, not what is being offered. The other part is governance. I was making a joke last week with Juan Carlos about next year our main success or our main goals are basically regulations, because we need to settle. We need to fix this, because this moment is unique. We don't know how long we will have Mr. Navarro with us that protect us, but it is going to be difficult if we don't establish. And again, it is needed for private sector to have those signals that forecast of what will happen. And the other part is monitoring. What it must measure, it doesn't exist. And we are not going to have several frameworks of monitoring. We are going to have one. And the last one is people. It's the last one, but it's not the last one. It's actually now at the center of everything we do. That's where what guides us is actually how can we help the people survive this triple crisis that they are not, in most of the cases, they are not even fully aware they exist, but there is definitely at the front lines of this. And I want to end this part by actually one of the partners that we have recently were trying to make this connection, that we just by talking we find out that UNDP is also looking for that model of unification, and so they are working right now. It's not finalized, but we are working towards having UNDP to help us create that strategy that pull of these together, like make this organization, this plan actually comes through, hopefully next year if everything goes well.
We are very thankful for letting us contribute to this beautiful country. But you mentioned two things that I want John to address. You mentioned 20 years ago, that means that you were in the early 20s, Juan Carlos and Ana, so young people, the youth, the role of youth. But also, now that you mentioned about the ministry being him like the champion, how can we make youth participate in a way that they can, of course, be part, but also guarantee somehow sustainability? Because also we have to think of what you're saying. What happens if you go because the person you are saying is defending us is leaving? I mean, what would be like the strategy there, since your point of view? Youth and champions that can sustain in a long term these like pioneer interventions or solutions that they are describing.
For youth, I think it's going to be really important for the educational system to be involved. The more and more, it's clear that if you want to understand nature, you shouldn't open a biology book. You should work in nature. You should find some experience where you can really see how it works together. And so that kind of experiential learning with young people is going to be really important. That also puts them in a wonderful position to be the citizen scientists and the change makers, the people who can notice something local, say, what can I do about this? What would help me or my family or my friends? And actually learn to do something, to test it, and to show that it works. If they have that kind of understanding of the system, and they have a system that empowers them, to develop those local solutions, and they're given the support they need to say, we know what needs to be done, and we want your support for it, you have an army coming to win the battle at the crucial moment. If you don't, you're going to have a bunch of people in rooms like this and a bunch of kids saying, you gave us a broken planet, and it's all going to fall apart. So I think that empowering young people, giving them the understanding and the experiences which will be rewarding and motivating, and then supporting them to do the things that we do know how to do. It's not rocket science to compost and improve soil. It's not rocket science to demonstrate that pesticide use can be reduced if you bring in the right mix of species. It's not rocket science to notice that once you start planting plants, it gets noticeably cooler. And it's not rocket science to say that once you've made it cooler here, if everyone did that everywhere, we would make it cooler everywhere. That's the kind of basic information that doesn't require a PhD. It requires young people.
Thank you so much, John and Anna. This has been fantastic. So empowering youth, working with them, making them part of the decision-making processes, and of course, pioneers and champions as you, Anna, and Juan Carlos. Thank you so much for all your insights and feedback, and thank you so much to the Minister of Environment and all the allies for these spaces. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, for moderating that conversation. You know, I love it how it ended with how we engage and empower youth, because that really serves as the perfect segue to our next fireside chat. You know, I think it's one thing to engage youth and bring them in. It's another thing to tap into their superpowers, which is, I think, perfectly sets the stage for this session, which is called The Future of Mangroves and Next Generation Leadership. We're going to explore how creativity and youth leadership have really been a force for the transformation of mangrove conservation, of course, one of the most powerful tools for climate resilience. And we're joined by two inspiring change makers. Maywin Young began his journey at the age of 10 when he traveled to Myanmar and helped plant 3 million trees, mangrove trees, with Worldview International Foundation, which leads me to rock my new favorite hat. Shout out to the team. I commented, I'm like, that hat looks so amazing. Where'd you get that? I'm like, we designed this. It's like, no way. Next time I come to Panama, I get bestowed this beauty. You know, Maywin, I think like most people, you find something that you're inspired by, you want to make a difference, but like, how do you actually meaningfully contribute? And what he did is he turned to one of his passions, anime. And he created a character, a story, and actually an entire world around Mangosa. That really serves to both educate, empower, inspire young people around the world to both understand the challenge, but also better understand why this specific solution represents the scalable impact that's required. So he's going to be joining us on stage, and he'll be interviewed by Mary Nitolo, who's the founder and creative director of the studio, a New York-based production animation company. It's behind films, museum installations, large-scale visual experiences for major brands, artists, nonprofits. She served as an executive producer on award-winning documentaries and, of course, sits on the board of Worldview USA. Please join me in welcoming Maywin and Mary to the stage.
Hello. So thank you to the last panel for perfectly setting this up.
And when Maywin came to me about a year ago with his vision for Mangosa, I was like, how can we help you get this illustrated and produced? And the story is so inspiring, so is he. So I'll lead right into my first question. So you're here today, showing this incredible commitment from Panama. And as you sit here representing Mangosa and by extension Worldview, number one, how does it feel to be here?
Well, for starters, it's really cool to be here in this environment. I'm so blessed to be around so many different people who are inspirational to me and care so much about the environment just like me. You know, hearing everyone's speeches and everything before kind of highlighted and made me think back to when I first started the project in general and how long it's come and how amazing it has developed today. Thank you.
So you've talked about Mangosa as a way to change the narrative on climate. Can you tell us a little bit about your first encounter with Dr. Arne and how did that shape your idea about how one person's ideas can actually reshape reality on the ground?
Mm-hmm. Well, my first encounter with Dr. Arne goes such a long way because my mom introduced me to Dr. Arne when I was really young, going to Sri Lanka, Paradise Farm. You know, when I first went to Myanmar at 10 years old is when I really was able to see the impact that Dr. Arne has and dive myself into those projects. I first encountered the students and the young kids who are around in Myanmar, the natives, and they inspired me so much when I started planting mangroves with them because it kind of highlighted and ignited this whole project that I have right here. And without that, and without Dr. Arne, I wouldn't even be able to be sitting right here in this chair. So it was just so powerful to see his impact and how long that goes.
So Worldview began with one person deciding to act. And when you think about that journey from an idea to millions of mangroves planted, hundreds of millions of mangroves planted, what part of the story speaks to you as an 18-year-old and convince you that narrative and story can help scale that impact globally?
Well, one of my biggest inspirations is anime and manga. And I think that the fact that Mangosa is a medium that can be expressed to all different ages, it can appeal to a diverse range of people. And being able to articulate it through a manga and anime form is so important for especially the younger audiences because it's a medium that keeps growing daily and every single day just keeps getting bigger. And so being able to articulate it through this is probably the most powerful as an 18-year-old. I think it's the most impactful for the younger audiences.
You're speaking my language here. I've spent 35 years using art and strategy to basically create awareness and to help persuade people to do the right thing, which I think most people do, want to do. So Mangosa is a superhero born from mangroves, but Worldview is about real-world superpowers. What tools, knowledge, or support do you think young people need to feel they can be real-life Centauri, guardians of the planet?
So I believe that where I felt I really made a difference was when I first took that trip and started planting the mangroves themselves, because that really, I was able to see it in front of me, the forefront, and to see the power of the mangroves. The mangroves are such a divine structure that can protect and nurture. And so I believe that when young people purchase Mangosa and that donation goes towards these mangrove trees being planted, they can see visually that they're making a difference. When they decide to invest in Mangosa and when they decide to really learn about the mangroves themselves, that's when they can really tap into, okay, how are we going to make this change and how is this going to affect other people in the future and us, most importantly, because it's our lives that we're affecting every single day, especially when we plant these mangrove trees.
So you imagine your peers in Panama, New York City, and beyond. What makes you optimistic that your generation is ready to step up? And what still worries you?
Well, I mean, every single day, you know, things keep progressing really fast. You know, even right now, currently, with the whole way of Gen Z and social media and quick thinking and fast-paced thinking, short attention spans, you know, it's kind of easy to get distracted and not fully dive yourself into what you're focused on. But I also have hope because I've introduced my project to a lot of different young audiences, and when I'm really able to articulate and have them listen to me, they always seem interested and ready to take action. And I think that as a generation, Gen Z is a group of people and students that are always ready to take action. You know, so that's what I have hope for.
And for my final question, how can, besides Mendoza, how do you think we can help convince people that what happens in Southeast Asia or in Panama can affect the kid in the Bronx?
Well, I think, like I said before, all they need is, you know, visual representation and showing them that their choices and what they put in can make a real difference. You know, everything goes a long way and everything is really connected. And when my mom first took me to Myanmar and I was able to see all the different kids there, you know, they were just like me. Like, everything is so relatable. You know, I was playing soccer with them, I was talking to them, and I felt just at home. And so I realized that even though we might be across the world from each other, everyone is really connected, and this is a goal that we can all reach together.
So you're going to organize a group of young friends to come here and help plant mangroves?
Of course.
Okay, cool. Okay. Okay.
Can we get the slides rolling, or is that? I'm not sure. Should I? Okay. We're good? Okay, cool. So Mendoza Tura, Mendoza is the main character and basically the representation of the mangroves themselves. So animated change, a youth-led movement from Panama to NYC. According to NASA and the WMO, 2024 was the hottest year on record. Carbon dioxide, greenhouse gases rose by record amounts to new highs, driving long-term temperature increases that we're living through currently today. For the MDB group, worldwide climate finance reached US $137 billion in 2024, a record for combined funding. And yet, even with all that money, all that effort, 2024 was still the hottest year ever recorded. We need to examine this. And for me, the answer is simple, and I want to share it with you. We must change the narrative on climate change. We need to speak in a language that people understand, especially young people. And that language is animation and storytelling. Next slide, please. Oh. Oh, wait, no. Go back. Okay, about me. So, I briefly explained it before, but here are a couple pictures of me when I was 10 years old, taking my first trip to Myanmar. At 10 years old, I traveled with my family to the mangrove forests of Myanmar. I planted trees alongside other children from Myanmar whose lives were literally saved because those mangroves protected their communities along the Bay of Bengal. A climate park was created there. Birds, elephants, and nature have all returned. And that just goes to show you how far the mangroves can help provide for everyone in the ecosystem. Here are a couple more pictures. Now, my goal is to tell a story that can motivate and compel the youth. You know, we were just talking about how if we are able to inspire and educate the younger audiences and the younger people around us, then we can lead an even bigger change because this is going to be our future and the world that we're dealing with. I would have been planning there today in Myanmar with the same children, now young adults like me, if the political situation was stable. And I'm 18 now, and many of us are working to convince adults and leaders about Mangosa, a climate superhero born from the mangrove forest, fighting cortonics, a villain made of greenhouse gases. So it's the whole story itself is a metaphor of what's going on right now with mangroves, greenhouse gases, and everything that I was able to observe when I took a trip to Myanmar. And why anime and manga? See, I was already inspired. I was watching anime when I was 5 years old, 6 years old, watching Dragon Ball, Naruto, everything. So I already was so interested in that when I saw what was going on around me and my mom introduced me to all these things, I was able to tie it in so perfectly together because I knew that this was a medium that would inspire. And each year it keeps growing. When I was first watching this stuff with my brother, it wasn't as big as it is now, but it's definitely more at the forefront. And I believe that it's the perfect timing with my creation that I made myself, you know. And the premise, every 236 years, a guardian is born, a centauri. You know, it's a guardian chosen by nature, meant to protect the earth, and the mangroves tie directly into the character. He's basically representing the mangroves themselves. It's a call to action. I want to really inspire the youth and have them understand that it's not just a project that I'm trying to tell, just like, it's not a story, it's not just a story, it goes such a long way, and it's so beneficial. And every time somebody purchases a copy or donates to the cause, it directly goes towards the mangrove trees being planted. Here are a couple concept art sketches and designs. You can see Cortonyx in the back representing the greenhouse gases, Mangosa, Centauri guardian with green vegetated skin, and Bai, she's a warrior, also the second to main character, who was affected by the evil Cortonyx when she was younger. So she represents the call to strike back, to fight back, and that's what her character is based off of. And today I'm proud to be invited guest of Minister Navarro and his team. Together we kick off Mangosa Tura, working with young people, indigenous communities, organizations, NGOs, and investors to build a movement from New York City to Panama. A movement to combat climate change, plant mangrove trees, and create carbon markets that sustain and expand our development beyond Panama into other parts of Latin America and the Caribbean. This is our moment, this is our movement, and together we can animate real change. And I thank you guys so much for listening to what I had to say today.
Nice job, Maywin. And as a parent, nice job, Mama. So fitting that we build on how youth are being empowered and empowering other youth to put a spotlight on 3 women who really are, and this is going to sound hyperbolic, but are the most impactful, preeminent global climate leaders in the world. And I'll tell you why. I first had a chance to meet 2 of them, MC Graf and Hita Lakhani, when the 2 of them served as Youngo Global Focal Points. For those of you who don't know, Youngo is the official youth constituency of the Climate COP, the UNFCCC. Every year, 2 young people are chosen from their peers to represent all youth from around the world at the climate negotiations. MC and Hita have the distinguished honor of being the only 2 youth leaders in the history of Youngo to serve for 2 years. And in partnership with their co-founder, Vina, the 3 of them, along with their 4th co-founder, launched a program called the Youth Negotiator Academy. And this really addressed the insights that the 3 of them had through the COP process, which was, yes, it's great if young people are attending the COP. Yes, it's great if young people are part of these negotiations or part of these delegations. But unless young people are actually at the negotiating table themselves, will only get so far. And so what these four extraordinary young women did was they spearheaded a program to address that issue. And they launched something called the Youth Negotiator Academy, which called on governments to not only nominate a young person, and by the way, in UN speak, a youth is under the age of 35. So, and that's important because, you know, this is not your model UN, right? I mean, these are ministers, ambassadors, chiefs of staff. These are the rising leaders of countries who happen to be under the age of 35. And they call on these governments to appoint a person under the age of 35, a young person, to be a part of the actual negotiations themselves. And once that happened, once they signed an MOU and a partnership agreement with the Youth Negotiator Academy, they were brought into a system where they received training, mentorship, negotiation strategies, obviously a global network to tap into, but also the financial assistance to travel to and participate in the COP process, which provided an enormous resource for governments that oftentimes only have the ability to send a few negotiators to represent their interests. And what these young women didn't want was to have a quote-unquote young person take the place of an experienced negotiator. They wanted it to be complementary, additive. And so what they did was they launched this program, and immediately the UN system said, this is an amazing program. We want to help. Let's build this underneath our umbrella. We'll give you the resources. We'll give you the financial structure. We'll give you the contacts. But we want this to be part of the UN system. And these young women brilliantly said, hard no. This has to be done outside of the UN system because of all the inadequacies and that we have seen by participating within the UN system. And so they dealt with enormous blowback, significant political headwinds. And in the face of all of that, they launched on Earth Day in 2022 at the Global Youth Summit, co-organized by YoungGo and March for Science at EarthX. And actually Trammell Crow, who is scribbling notes for our upcoming interview on the side there, actually has the distinct honor of being the first donor to the Youth Negotiator Academy. And what that set in motion is something that, quite frankly, is extraordinary. In that first year, they got 26 governments to formally join the Youth Negotiator Academy, and these women trained 52 negotiators to travel to Sharm el-Sheikh, COP27, and what was clear was they were just getting started. Because as of now, more than 60 countries have signed, 90, I see this is, I'm so outdated, 90 countries, 99, we're one away from 100? Come on, ladies. 99 countries have formally joined the Youth Negotiator Academy at the Climate COP, and they have trained several hundred negotiators and helped them travel to and participate in this process. But what's exciting is about why they're actually here in Panama, because this isn't the Climate COP, this is the UNCCD. This is another one of the Rio conventions, because this program that has been proven within the Climate COP is expanding. It's expanding across all three of the Rio conventions. And so to kick off this conversation, Hita Lakhani, co-founder of Youth Negotiator Academy and chief correspondent for SDG News, will be moderating a conversation with the two co-founders and leaders of the Youth Negotiator Academy, MC and Vina. So please join me in welcoming these three extraordinary leaders.
Welcome once again. Matt has not only introduced, he's also summarized and completed our panel. So we're now done and we can move on to the next one. Now the backstory, Matt was, when we co-founded, when we had the idea of the Youth Negotiators Academy, Matt was our first and the strongest supporter. And he has seen us from day one, a little before day one actually. Until today, which is why he knows all of the numbers, the story, the history, everything else.
And I have the very, very distinct pleasure of being here and moderating this conversation today with two of the most favorite people in the world that I have. My co-founders, MC, also known as Marie Claire, and Luna, and Sophie, who is not here, but she's with us in spirit. Before we dive into, I mean, we've now heard about YNA, but before we get into it, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself for the audience, a little bit of the backstory, starting first with MC, on what was your backstory, how did this idea come into place, and then we'll move on to Ina from there.
Yeah, thanks so much. And we talked before already about leadership, and it's something which is at the core mission of what the Academy is doing. Well, growing up in the Swiss mountains, I have been always very close to see the impact of the climate crisis, and have been personally very affected, seeing how the glaciers are melting and how the natural environment is changing so quickly. So it was always my very intrinsic motivation to do something against it. But it's very hard when you're just a child. We just heard before like what young people can do, but it sometimes feels very daunting to be kind of facing such a big challenge. So I have been doing a lot of work on the local level, then went to the national level, and somehow I kind of slided into this international climate negotiations a couple of years after you have been joining the international negotiations, and I was completely overwhelmed and felt very useless, and I didn't get anything. I didn't understand what was going on, so I didn't want to come back, but as you know, the space somehow, you make friends and then you stick around. So I joined for an NGO, a youth NGO, and then 2 years later I got a call by our former president of Switzerland, and she called and asked if I would join the Swiss delegation as a negotiator. This is something we as young people have been often calling for, to have more representation, as mentioned before on the panel, to have young people in these seats and being able to negotiate and talk on their own behalf instead of only advising or talking to someone who might represent their views at one point. So I initially got very overwhelmed and I rejected the offer, and then after some convincing I then accepted the offer. And then I went to the negotiations, and it has not been my first one, but I was still super overwhelmed and it was really challenging, and that kind of led me to think, well, first we need more young people in these rooms. We need more diversity. We need more diverse perspectives. But we also need to ensure that when we're actually in these seats and having this seat at the table, when we actually have the opportunity to speak, that we actually can speak. And for this, we need to have the knowledge, the resources, the skills, and the network to be able to bring about change. And I didn't have it because I was the only young person on these tables. I was not properly trained. I didn't know how to negotiate and what was the difference between should and should and welcome and note and all of these things. And I was like, it's all synonyms to me. So to me, the idea was like, okay, we need to build something which brings more young people, well-capacitated, trained, and also connect them. So we together are a strong network which can bring about change. Because it's not about just bringing young people for the sake of having young people there to lower the average age of these negotiations, but actually bringing them there to change something. And so that was, at least to me, the first time I had like this little manifestation of what today is the Academy, and afterwards working with Hita and then with Vina, and that's a little bit of my backstory.
Thank you. Yeah, MC and I worked for 2 years before we co-founded the Youth Negotiators Academy, met Veena and Sophie, and did this. But Veena, your story is slightly different, and you didn't come from the UN negotiation space. MC and I almost grew up in that space, but you sort of got landed into it. What's that like?
Well, so I had a background in social entrepreneurship, human rights, and in the intersection of sustainability and grassroots development back in India. And I heard about COI 16, and somebody wouldn't let me get there. So I was like, I want to know how to be there. And I just tried to go on the internet and typed COI, and then COP came, and I'm like, what is COP? And then in one of the websites, I saw Hita's name, and I decided, she's Indian, looks friendly, I'm going to write to her. I wrote on LinkedIn, she would not respond, but on Instagram, right away, I got a response. And I told her I want to understand more. Rest is history. I landed at COP26 because Yango needed a communications lead. So I was there in the spot, my first COP, and I was leading the communications for Yango. So that really needed me to learn what the space is about in those 12 days, but also to create communication materials just then. So
I was with the two of them, so my learning curve was very steep. I remember walking along the corridors with both of them, and I'll ask questions on, okay, what is going on over here? What does mitigation work program actually mean? And then they will tell me something and I can't even understand, so I'll take voice record and then ensure that I have the story stored somewhere, then I'll go back and try to understand. So anyway, as a part of that, I learned a lot and my journey was very quick. I was also looking into the negotiation rooms, and for me, I'm coming from outside the space, and I just could not understand why were we accepting what was going on over there. I saw everybody look similar inside a negotiation room. I could not understand what was the importance of that comma in that sentence, and that went on for 4 hours, and I just could not handle it. So as an outsider, I was very curious to say, what is more important? How do we change that homogeneous composition of those negotiation rooms? Why were we, as those who identified themselves as young people, outside, and we had our own coordination in the mornings as observers, but why wasn't anybody young inside the negotiation rooms? And when I then heard that Marie Claire was a negotiator and they were thinking about, oh, how do we do something for negotiators? I said, I want to buy into this and I want to be a part of this as we build it. So that's how my journey began. And we started conversations a couple of weeks after COP26 in 2021, so early in January, and we started brainstorming on what would be a great design, what is going on, and conversations went in two different directions. One was on, okay, if we look at justice of political participation, you have two strands. So one part of it is simply the access. Why are people not inside the room? Because there is no pathway. There is no way to, there is no structural access into the space at all for younger people, women, indigenous people. So there's just no structural access. So that was then said, how do we tackle this? What do we do about it? The second component was to say, is it enough if we were at the negotiation tables, like we were there, sitting next to the others who know everything that they need to be talking over there? How do you claim your legitimacy as a leader? How do you claim that first order rights as that person sitting in that table? What kind of capacity development, deepening, skills, knowledge, network, everything that that person sitting there needs to claim their legitimacy as a leader? So, and we recognize that many organizations, many initiatives that exist within the space do one or the other, but nobody was looking at doing both at the same time because we needed both in-house under one roof to be able to ensure that we had a triangular relationship with the country, with the negotiators we train, and us. So that is ultimately how the design of our program was formed, and it's been quite a journey since then. I'm going to hand over to you to ask us the next question before I go in.
Yeah. No, I think just this conversation has also taken me back a few years into memory. And for the rest of the audience, I stepped down from the Youth Negotiators Academy, the team, about a year and a half ago. And I think when we started building, when we sort of started putting it into execution, of course, there were many challenges, some of which Matt mentioned. But it's been a journey since then, since 2022 to now. It doesn't sound that long, but the impact in those 3 years, or 3.5 years, has been extremely massive. So remind us once again, it's 99 countries. And this is now not just the UNFCCC, it's not just the Climate COP, it's also the UNCCD, and soon the biodiversity as well.
Absolutely.
So all 3 Rio conventions. So when we talk about, not just talking in silos as we've been doing all day, how do we move between conventions? This is one way to sort of do that. How many young negotiators so far?
650, 550 for the climate, so UNFCCC, and 100 for UNCCD.
And this is in how many years?
4 years.
The 4th year is just starting. It's not 4 years. But this journey wasn't easy, and we know it all too well. What were the few sort of key challenges that we've had to navigate around? And of course, I want you to share not just the starting part of it, but also as it's grown, as the number of negotiators have grown. How have you worked around navigating these numbers, the countries, because it comes with 99 countries, comes with 99 different problems, very realistically. So what does that look like?
Well, I think when we started off, the challenges were quite different, right? Because in our very first theory of change was like, well, there are no young people in the room and there's no trust from the so-called adults or the older generation that young people could even sit potentially on a table. And now this changed because, as mentioned, we have trained 650 negotiators, and we were just coming from Belém from COP30, where in every single room you go, you will find at least 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 young negotiators who are sometimes sitting together, then in the evening huddling together, writing new proposals. So the challenges changed over the time. I think now it's really the ambition of the academy was never to just bring young people for the sake of having them there, as mentioned before, but actually to systemically transform multilateral systems, to bring these synergies at the core, to bring back the meaning, to ensure that these multilateral negotiations are actually delivering on the promise they were once set up for, and also that we bring them closer together. That's why for us, in our very first proposal, we always wanted to have these 3 programs, because we want to ensure that we don't talk about synergy as a fancy word just because it's kind of looking good, but actually having people who understand more than one convention. And I think I'm probably not the only one. Like, as I mentioned before, when I went to my first negotiations, I was completely overwhelmed. So many people have no clue what's going on. Well, if we train you for one convention, you might be brilliant in this one convention, but how can you talk about synergies if you have no clue that there's even other conventions? Not to talk about, to know about the technical details, and now how, for example, we can make reference around how gender is impacted, or how we do adaptation, which is also serving biodiversity increase and also not damaging or further degrading the land. So that's when we talk about the synergies in action, when we talk people actually having the knowledge to ensure that whatever policy frameworks and implementation we are driving are actually being implemented. I think that's now kind of a new twist of a challenge, that we are working against many odds, because again, there's many forces who want to silo things and kind of put them, like, in different boxes, and we want to break through. We want to bring a different energy. We want to convene people differently. We want to ensure that there is a new type of how we are coming together and how negotiations and decisions are made, and that's what we're up for, and that's what we're dreaming for to succeed. But also they're very practical challenges, right? You mentioned working with 99 countries, 99 problems, 99 different realities. Also, of course, like, bringing young people from all around the world to these spaces costs just a lot of money, to be very frank. These are mega events where, everything goes through the roof. And we are committed. We are from the onset that we don't only want to just train people and then kind of let them, figure it out how they go to these places, but we train you, we give you the community, we do the advocacy with you, and also we fully fund your participation to actually go there for your country. And maybe just because we are hosted by Panama now, Panama has been one of the initial countries joining on the onset 4 years ago and has been a part since then. So we have been, over the years, funding negotiators for Panama, and we see now how these negotiators take up leadership positions in the system and are going to places where I have never been. We all have never been, and we're just like, wow, this is just phenomenal. But all of this takes time, and it takes a long time, which also costs quite a lot of money to bring people there. But we are up for the challenge, and we are very excited to see these successes now being up there.
I want to quickly add on to what Marie-Claire had shared, both on the challenges as well as success, because the other side of the challenge is success, and it's the same coin. So one thing that we recognized when we started working on this was how young people are actually perceived. Sometimes you hear this question, what do the youth want? What is the youth position in the negotiations? Like, it's not about youth position, right? So the moment we talk about young people as youth, we are putting them in a box. We're making them an interest group that's having an interest and wants something. On the other side, what we were trying to tackle was to say they are citizens who have rights to be a part of these decision-making spaces. And currently there is a systemic gatekeeping. How do we sort of navigate that? So that was an interesting thing, and that's something that we still keep seeing a lot as to that silos. Basically, it's created through also the narratives and discourse and how we then ask these questions. And then how are other initiatives designed? What does youth engagement really mean? We still have no idea what do we mean by meaningful participation of young people. So the discourse and the narrative in the space around young people continues to be a challenge, which is why it is really important for us to also change that narrative. Marie-Claire mentioned the advocacy and outreach. We do a lot of this just to be able to change that narrative in the ecosystem, the actors who are already within the space. Let's start there, and then how do we go beyond? So that's one part of it, and the other side of it.
Yeah, do you have any stories of the negotiators? In
Exactly.
The what does it actually look like in those rooms?
Absolutely. So very Claire mentioned that we have now every negotiation room you go into, at least 2 or 3 of them are trained by us, and they're inside those rooms. Yesterday, we just walked into the opening plenary of the CRIC here for the UNCCD, and we just enter and we see one of the negotiators we trained for UNCCD from Spain. Her name is Maria. She is now also the head of delegation, and she was delivering the opening statement on behalf of the Northern Mediterranean countries. So that was absolutely fantastic to see. I want to take an example of Panama because Panama joined us in 2022, and we have the OG cohort of 2022, and Abdiel, from your delegation, he is now leading on finance negotiations for you and also for ILAC and the group of countries. He's also been now elected to be a part of the Standing Committee of Finance for 2027, so the round that starts then. We have Carol, who is also a coordinator for ACE negotiations, if I remember. So what's been interesting, I mentioned that the triangle, right? So us, we do the work of enabling capacity building, capacity deepening. We work with the countries directly, and we train the negotiators. And there is this triangular relationship. And one is we enable the negotiators, but we also need the countries to enable the negotiators. And I want to really take a moment to congratulate and applaud Panama because they have been at the forefront of ensuring that their team was on the table. That not just put the individuals on the map, but the entire country on the map. You can see that Panama is leading the discussions in the multilateral system. When you go into COP30 plenary, closing. So if somebody hasn't watched it, please watch it. You can see Anna the star in the COP30 closing plenary. And the reason why I wanted to share that is this is really important. And these are some of the successes. We see negotiators in the evenings, they come into the hotels, and when they're sitting, they talk, they have different negotiation groups, different countries, but they follow the same negotiation track, be it mitigation, adaptation, whatever the topic that they're following, and then they sit down and they discuss. They're informally building a community, friendships. So when something's not moving forward in a very consensus-based process, they're able to call upon the friendships, understand what's going on the other side. Because consensus is something where somebody doesn't object. So you need to understand then, okay, what's going on the other side and how do you get them to say a yes. So it's been really beautiful to see some of these examples. Many are now heads of delegations, many are group coordinators, many like Abdiel are going into different committees and bureaus. And we see the next generation of leadership emerging. And what we're hoping is in the next 10 years, as we go forward, these would be people who are in key positions of responsibility, and we're really hoping that the kind of skills and knowledge and network and community of care that we give them will enable them to think about and be visionary leaders that we're looking for.
Thank you. I have a final question, but the reason for the question, when we started the morning, if you remember, Matt very clearly said the audience here that this is a hand-picked audience, and you're handpicked because you're a part of the puzzle. And the Youth Negotiators Academy is one part of the puzzle as well. But how can this audience support you, and how can we sort of build synergies in this room to go forward?
Well, let me actually first start. Where is Matt? Where's one? Listen for a moment, because actually, like this is something which, in the closing of in Glasgow, you were delivering the statement, and you were delivering a statement that your average age in the delegation was something 29, right? And your minister was 30 or something like this, and it changed something fundamentally in the room, because it was what we talk about is the mindset, and I think that's something we as a room and a piece of a puzzle can really build. We have to speak up, and we have to lead by example, and that's what Panama did back then, and since then has ever been doing, and that led to this summit and to the pledge. And I think like the space is looking for good examples is looking for people, countries, and actually like just did it, and they are proud to say that the delegation is the youngest delegation. When I was a negotiator and I was 23 years old, you know what my delegation told me? You can do whatever you want, but under no circumstance reveal your age, because no one will ever trust you again. I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to say my age. And then just the next COP, a whole delegation is proud of, sharing that the delegation is young. So that's like one thing. Like let's just go out and be proud of what we're doing, and let's be proud of and share the stories, because I think like it can inspire. And when Juan mentioned this, he didn't know that he inspires other people to actually set up an academy, and this can go a long way. So let's share these success stories. From maybe like you can also like pick up, but if you know countries, if you know great people, if you know great entities, if you feel that you can support in any way, please come and talk to us. We really work on an ecosystem approach, means everyone who has who is willing to work with us and support us. We have always found ways in a reciprocity to support your work and support our work, and I think that's really the beauty about what the future of multilateralism is. It's not that we against the others, but actually how can we do it together.
And to add to what Marie-Claire said, how you can help is also the negotiators are now starting to graduate. They're going into different spaces, and they're a part of their country's delegation, but they also do country level work, like national level work, grassroots level work as well on implementation. So because we work with 99 countries, I'm assuming we would be able to find many of you in the room that we're working with already as a part of your nationality. And what we can do is help set up that network for the negotiators too. So even if you're not directly working with Youth Negotiators Academy, our ecosystem approach helps us ensure that we can connect that mycelium and help support it in the negotiators and the countries in different forms. So it would also be great to know. So just come and talk to us, and that would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you. What a joy, pleasure, and delight, an honor actually, to be here. And thank you so much for being a wonderful audience. Ditto.
Thank you, Hita, Vina, and MC. I just want to point out, I think one thing that binds all of us together in this room is our shared commitments to making a difference, wanting to have some purpose-driven life where we feel like we're having an impact. And I think there's a really powerful lesson to take from not just the three women on the stage just now, but also Maywin. And it's that their path to making a difference is actually focused on empowering others to make a difference. And I think that's really beautiful. So we have one final spotlight and then a closing interview to close out the Nature Summit. Our spotlight is with Caroline Howell, who is the founder of Canopy Development Company, and she is going to help us rethink, reimagine how we measure, value, and interact with nature through an emerging paradigm that she's spearheading called carbon metabolics. Through the lens of the Canopy Development Company, she's going to illustrate how development can transcend the built environments and become a tool for restoring ecological cycles, supporting local livelihoods, and creating habitats where all life forms thrive. Please join me in welcoming Caroline.
Hello, thank you everyone. Josh, I think that your ingredient for humility is definitely relevant in this room. It's been amazing to hear about all of the different projects going on. So that one is a check. My name is Caroline Howell. I am the founder and CEO of Canopy Development Company. We are a real estate developer with a single and devoted mission, which is to create more life. We have more life on the land, more life in the ecosystems, and more life in the people who reside in our projects. We are here to propose a simple concept that if we leverage a traditional market, real estate, as a platform for economic innovation and ecological restoration, we will be able to achieve scalable results. Our journey to this vision started with a unique partnership. After we purchased our land, we were connected with Pro Eco Azuero, one of our hosts and most committed NGOs in Panama. By the way, before I go on, I feel like we need to take a moment to celebrate Pro Eco Azuero. They are the recent award winners of the UNESCO Japan Prize for Education and Sustainable Development, and I think we absolutely need to. Sandra, thank you for your commitment, for the work that you do, and for being an extraordinary partner to us. We are a direct benefit from the community impact that you're having, and it is witnessed at every level, so we really appreciate you. Pro Eco Azuero, after we connected with them, they revealed something to us which was really extraordinary, and that was that our development sits inside of a 20,000 hectare biological corridor that has been planned as a major restoration initiative in our region of the Azuero Peninsula. Pro Eco Azuero partnered with us to reforest Canopy, and that partnership became the foundation of everything that is possible today. They took a chance on a real estate development, something rare and courageous in the conservation world, and because they did, a new model became possible, and it proved something profound. Nature does not leave anyone behind. When invited into restoration, ranchers, developers, the very people typically demonized for land degradation, everyone can be a part of a healing solution. As I learned more about the corridor, I fell in love, not just with the ecological project, but as an intellectual challenge. How do we finance the restoration of an entire landscape? That journey took me through nearly every existing mechanism, carbon credits, biodiversity credits, donations, and I quickly realized that none of these tools are scalable for dynamic living ecosystems, nor are they inclusive of landowners or ranchers that are sitting inside of the corridor that we aim to restore. They're slow, bureaucratic, expensive, and often reward unhealthy outcomes rather than true biological health. I came to a simple conclusion, which is that if we want a system that values life, we need to create it. This has led us to a new concept called carbon metabolomics, a measurement of how alive an ecosystem is. Traditional carbon accounting asks how much carbon is being stored. Metabolomics asks what is the metabolic activity of this land? How fast is carbon cycling, and how fast is life returning? By analyzing the metabolites of fungi, microbes, roots, and insects, metabolomics allows us to monitor restoration in real time, understand carbon cycling with molecular precision, evaluate biodiversity functionally rather than symbolically, and build a new financial pathway for living systems. Most importantly, the method is scalable, done with a simple soil probe and a meter measurement system. This is the device being innovated at Canopy today. This method is also widely relevant. The same method can measure improvements of pasture land, reforested land, wetlands, or any other landscape. And it does not leave small landowners behind. Everyone can measure their metabolic improvement regardless of the size and ecology of their land. The power of corridor restoration with real data is measurable. Restoring a corridor at this scale has profound ecological impact. Research shows that biological corridors increase wildlife movement by up to 50%, accelerate natural regeneration by up to 30%, and can double carbon sequestration rates by reactivating ecological processes at landscape scale. This corridor reweaves habitats for spider monkeys, ocelots, anteaters, migratory birds, pollinators, and the unseen microbial worlds that underpin all resilience. This is not a line on a map. It is a living circulatory system for life. One of the most misunderstood parts of restoration in the Azuero is cattle. For decades, cattle ranching has been blamed for deforestation, but cattle are not the enemy. Management is. When cattle moves the way wild herbivores once did, in tight herds, short grazing periods, with long recovery windows, they become a force for regeneration. Soil carbon can increase by 3 to 8 tons per hectare per year. Water infiltration can double, reducing runoff and erosion, and plant diversity can increase by 50 to 100%. Wildlife rapidly returns to previously degraded pasture land. Cattle can become architects of restorations, not drivers of degradation. And this matters deeply in the Asuero because ranching is a part of the cultural identity of the land and of the people. We are not replacing that culture, we are evolving it into something that is truly regenerative. This has led us to the first ever human-designed pastoral forest mosaic, a system built for maximum biodiversity and ecological function. It is the first design of its kind in its region, integrating ecological science with cultural heritage, honoring the Asuero's ranching traditions while restoring the ecosystems that sustain them. Canopy began as a real estate development with one intention, more life. And through this initiative, our partnership with Proacro Asuero, and through scientific innovation, plus a willingness to imagine a new economic model, that intention is becoming a blueprint for regional restoration. This is the future of development, one where residents are nourished by the land that they restore. It is fun, it is beautiful, it is inclusive, it is also healthy, and it is scalable. A few last notes after listening to this room of diverse allies in creating a more beautiful world. First, I hope we all take seriously the need to continue to innovate the nature credit markets. The goal must be that the generation of these credits are accessible to every landowner. Otherwise, we run the risk of creating yet another unnatural monoculture economic system that will surely fail. Second, we propose that we creatively find ways to leverage traditional markets, not brand new markets paired with other brand new markets in order to scalably make advancements in this space. And lastly, in my own experience, in order to be able to be the voices of nature, we must ourselves spend time in nature. Solutions can be seen and heard in the trees, in the grasslands, and in the wildlife that want to collaborate in a regenerative future with us. Canopy is committed to continuing to innovate until everyone is able to participate in the abundance of our collective healing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Caroline. And look, now we have our closing conversation. But before I bring on Trammell S. Crow, I wanted to announce, of course, this concludes the trilogy of the Nature Summit series here in Panama alongside the Rio Conventions. The design of the Nature Summit really was this idea of building connections and relationships, and in between the events, actually ensuring that those relationships turn into partnerships and then ventures and the kind of impact that we all want to see. But they're not always going to take place in Panama. In fact, the idea by design is that the Nature Summit series will be a traveling event throughout the world, around the world, throughout the year, on the margins of global forums that bring together public, private, and philanthropic leaders to, again, scale those proven solutions. The 2026 Nature Summit will be held at EarthX in Dallas, Texas on Earth Day, or Earth Week. And the focus of that Nature Summit will explicitly be engaging family offices and impact investors and connecting them with those scalable solutions. And so it's perfect and quite fitting that it would take place at EarthX, not just because Trammell has been a long supporter and actually the first supporter of the Nature Summit, but EarthX is an organization that's been around for 15 years and has really focused on mobilizing family office leaders who care about the environment, who invest in the environment. Last year, they brought together 70 principals from family offices. And for those of you who aren't familiar with a family office, it's a private vehicle that invests the wealth of individuals or families. Typically, a family office has at least $100 million of assets under management. And so what Trammell's done is really engage the family office network across the country, around the world, to come to EarthX and be a part of these high-level events. And so the Nature Summit, in partnership with EarthX, is going to be calling for family offices around the world to join us at EarthX, to be a part of that family office summit and our Nature Summits, and find ways to actually connect those with capital with those with the innovations that need to be replicated and scaled. So with that, I'd love for Trammell S. Crow, who has joined us today, to join me on stage for our closing interview. Trammell?
All right, sure.
So this is going to be a fireside chat. And that made it so much better that I didn't angst and didn't stay up tonight last night. But then I thought that I knew that whatever you asked me, talked about, I was going to wind up saying how great EarthX is and how you need to be. So I thought, what else? How can I not do that? I'm just going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to talk fast and not very well because I think it's too long.
And this is, you're going to be talking about EarthX, right? This is the idea?
Yeah, I'm going to
of course.
disguise it a little bit.
No, no, sure. Sneak it in. But I think, let me set the stage so that you can answer this. EarthX is something that you started 15 years ago. This is an organization that has brought people together in Dallas, Texas. First started as Earth Day Dallas.
Earth Day Dallas, then we became Earth Day Texas.
And you skipped Earth Day USA and went straight to EarthX, made it global. I did want to note that the year before the pandemic in 2019, to give you a sense of the scale that EarthX became, over 170,000 people came to Dallas to participate in EarthX, which was
over 170,000 people days.
Yeah, yes. Because it was an expo, it was a film festival, conferences. It was extraordinary. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. And when Trammell and EarthX could no longer bring people together, you pivoted and you found a way to still reach people, which was by launching EarthX TV, a cable television network focused on the environment that to date I think has is in 40 million households across the U.S.
23 and going down.
Back down to 23. But this gets to the heart of, I think, Trammell, what's happening next year at EarthX. And please use this as an opportunity to tell our audience what you've got planned for Earth Day 2026.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me speak. Now, I'm not really going to talk about the particulars because that could go on forever.
Sure.
And we are so independent-minded. We're going to have our banquets in the middle of the water park, and we're going to jump in the water after. So we do things differently. I had to write notes, and pardon me for just reading, really. It's the fastest way to get out. I'm a bad speaker. I don't think on my feet, and I only overcame stage fright a few years ago. Notes will help. Stop me from trying to sound intelligent or clever. And being a Texan, will try to reduce the exaggerations, braggadocio, and swagger. And I stumble and stutter, and I'm politically incorrect. And I cuss. Just now, writing these notes, I tried to avoid my perennial mistake, not addressing environmental subjects, not enlightening who might listen, not preaching and sermonizing, or sounding like the dean of doom and gloom and talking only about EarthX, and persuading people to come and sounding like a promoter and an impresario and a broken record and a salesman. Yeah, and on page 1. Oh, this was page 1.
Go on.
So I'm stuttering. Thank you, Matt. Your modesty, this is sincere. Your modesty is deep, too deep. Your sincerity, your sincere dedication. This guy does not work for money, does not work for fame. You need a bio so people will really know all of this. 7 years ago, Island. 7 years ago, he started Island Resilience Summit out of nowhere in Dallas, Texas. It's a high-quality event, and with just totally dedicated, ignoring the resistance. I'm not here because our friendship. I'm not here because our familiarity. I'm not here because he has Island Resilience Forum at our event. And I'm not here because he's a Texan. Well, maybe a little bit because you're Texan. Anything he does has impact. He's a deep believer. I'm here because he's a deep believer in SDG number 17. And he knows what it is. Here because he believes in connecting causes and making other events synergize. He believes in us, and he's real cute. You should have seen him with his man bun. So I wrote fast, and then I copied and rearranged and organized my stream of consciousness. I wrote in block print, double-spaced, and big, so I could do this. And as I did, it became clear that despite my best intentions, these remarks are thinly disguised attempts to bring you to EarthX, after all, in Dallas, Texas, on April 19th to 22nd, for a conference fee that's so damn cheap you'd think that we're begging. We're not. We're inexpensive. You might agree when you hear me out. We might be the most impactful environmental event of all. And he's trying to make me impactful in conventional ways. I keep on trying. That's a mighty big brag. Here's why. You know why? Because we're in Texas. That's not a brag either. We're the problem. We are the problem state. I've got other expressions about it somewhere. We're the problem. We're the biggest problem in America because we're the problem state. Think about that. This event is behind the enemy lines. We're in the bastion of denial. We're the right-wing beast. Houston is a monster of emissions. It doesn't give a flip about air, land, or sea, or people. By comparison, Dallas is a virtue, a paragon of virtue. Texas is the incarnation of the number 13, which you know can go both ways. So how is Texas number 13? That's on page 6. 40% of the fossil fuel in America comes from our state. It's canny, and it's so clever that Houston is already shifting from petroleum for transportation to plastics. This is what I'm preaching again. We all know the particulars about plastic, and we all know it'll take over. Instead of almost every beach in the world, it'll be in every leaf. It'll be in every cell. There are some scientists here who might gainsay what I'm saying, but it's preachy. It'll be in every cell of every mammal someday. It's every cell we have, huh? There'll be 2 plastics in every cell when we get through. Instead of being the equivalent of 1 credit card every month, or is it the equivalent of every week? It'll be 2 credit cards. And here I am preaching again, doom and gloom. what is the male equivalent of Cassandra? You know, that's how I feel. An environmental event in Texas, this is my point, is strategic. Now, obviously never been done before. And Texas is the incarnation of number 13. Let me see why. It's the biggest oil producer, 40% of the oil in America. But it's the biggest producer of wind energy and solar energy. That's a good thing. It doesn't have any supernatural resources. It's just people with true grit. In Dallas, we brag about that. We didn't have any reason to be there. No river, whatever, nothing. So it's human capital. We're strong motherfuckers, excuse me. And Dallas, as you reminded me today with, he loves to tell me, Dallas is already a Democratic municipality. Houston is too, I guess. Often, they're communists. I have billed myself publicly as a Green Republican, and it has helped. And I can only do that, I can only do this event as a Republican. You know that. So I'm a Green Republican.
And I just want to add one. I don't want to. Yeah. No, I don't want to disrupt this performance art because this is fantastic. But one thing that Trammell has focused on for 15 years has been bringing Republicans and Democrats together in the U.S. And I think now I am a Texan forever. I currently live in Copenhagen. So not so much in the fray of U.S. politics anymore, but obviously, what you're doing has been needed, is needed, will be needed to get people who don't agree, but also are looking at different sets of information and coming away with different ideas of what's happening in the world and actually finding, if not common ground, empathy of the fact that there's humanity and where everyone is coming from and wanting to find solutions that can achieve the kind of change we all want to see. You have taken arrows from Democrats for being too conservative. You've taken arrows from Republicans for being too progressive. You have sacrificed a tremendous amount year after year after year after year of what you've built. And I think what's come out of it is quite extraordinary. I just want to make
my kids are deniers.
Yeah.
So I'm in trouble at home too.
No, but I just want to note, one of the outcomes, and you talk about being impact-driven of EarthX, is the bipartisan congressional caucus on energy dominance in the U.S., led by a Republican and Democrat, happened because these two congressmen met at EarthX, found common ground around energy solutions, and launched this bipartisan caucus, one of the few that's been created, I think, in the last decade. And that's just one example of a tangible outcome of EarthX.
Climate, right? Bipartisan.
It's climate. It is climate. And by the way, you mentioned 13, SDG 13, climate action.
Okay. Thank you, Matt. When you meet an opposite or an opponent, when you meet the enemy, they're not quite as bad. Okay. I know George W. When you meet George W., he's a great guy. He's a great guy. I could name a lot of people that when you meet them, you are seduced. They're not. And I want to say out of turn here, because I didn't write it down before I forget. We're going to have a session, I hope it's 3 hours. Yeah. And everybody's told me not to do this. Even demos. We're going to have a session on Trump versus the environment. Because we can, because we don't give a shit. Because there will be ramifications. Okay, we might even lose our Republican senators from coming, but we need more Democrats, politicians. Anyway, we're going to do Trump versus the environment, and I cannot wait. All this stuff about Texas and number 13 and the strength Texas is going to enter the new age. It's going to be pulled into a new age like anybody. And here's what I think, and Matt's heard this before. If, and not if, when Texas goes light green, and Dallas is already Democrat, Houston's already Democrat, Austin's commie, when Texas goes light green, America will go deep green, dark green. And I'm not bragging either. It's not because we're great. It's because when there's these terrible politicians, and way too much Texas influence in Washington, there has been for 100 years. When Texas goes light green, America will go dark green. Earth X is the most important environmental influence in Texas. Besides one thing, and if you think long enough, you'll know what it is. Women's lib. The strength of women might be the main hope for environment. This is the last page. We don't even have to think of major impacts, initiatives at EarthX. Just being there, and it's not even education, it's just talking about the environment. Just Sylvia Earle up there preaching like she does. People listen. We're so unaware of environment that that's what we need. It's the rub-off effect, like I was telling you earlier, the rub-off effect. We have those family offices. Most of them are from Texas. Most of them are richer than Croesus. And they have their names on hospitals. Nothing environment. But we also have Democrats, we have Californians, we have East Coast. And there is a rub-off effect. Like in the eCapital Summit, we now have green venture capitalists. Because of eCapital Summit, when we started 8 years ago, there weren't any green venture capitalists in Dallas. I didn't get to finish my notes. My last part?
Oh, please.
Yeah, okay. Come. And please come. I beg you to come. And I can give you more reasons. I didn't write them down so I can't remember. But one, you have a quality audience. You have a great audience, and you did it last time too, and this is going places. He likes to connect, number 17, events so they have increasing impact. So come, your top quality, your leaders, and you will improve what we have, and you'll make us stronger. I promise. Thank you.
So, Tremel, my second question. Look, I don't need to sell anyone on the uniqueness of EarthX. I think we all get it. And what you've built is extraordinary. I will say, one thing about EarthX, and, this is, it's been described as kind of a conventional environmental conference meets Burning Man. And it's because during the day, you have some of these extraordinary conferences from family offices to island nations where they've had, I think over a dozen presidents and prime ministers from around the world who have traveled to participate in EarthX, to everything from land conservation to agriculture. I mean, it spans a gamut across the environment of what happens.
Nobody does that.
At EarthX.
Ocean, climate, wildlife conservation through hunting and fishing.
No, but it is the nexus of everyone who cares about the environment coming together from around the world from different perspectives. And it is at the heart of EarthX, we've talked about this SDG 17, Partnerships for Their Goals, that actually makes the magic of EarthX so special, because the connections you make and the bonds you create through these experiences, and every night at the end of EarthX, the conference, everyone comes to Tramel's home. It's kind of a Gatsby-esque party where hundreds of people, near 1,000 people, are there building relationships, connecting with one another, and the outcomes are just, it's extraordinary. We're proud that the next Nature Summit will be held at EarthX. We're proud that it will be focused on mobilizing family offices around the world to join those family offices that will already be at EarthX. And so our call to action coming out of this event is not just to family offices around the world, but for many of you who actually are spearheading or know of those scalable solutions that we want to showcase at EarthX. So, Trammell, thank you for being here.
That's it?
That's it.
Don't you have any stupid question? Intelligent question?
No. That's it. That's the only way to close it out, T. But we appreciate you being here.
One thing you said just now
Oh, sure.
was that you come with solutions and you come with connecting the conferences.
Yes.
So you came here, so you got to go there.
Yes.
And I don't know what you're going to do, but I hope you are a part of it from the next 5 months to figure out how we're making solutions.
Thank you, T.
Bullshit of all ingredients.
Sounds good, man. Thank you, sir.
I'm going to use
All right, and with that, we have concluded the trilogy of the Nature Summit series. Look, there's so many people who helped make this possible. Obviously, I do want to acknowledge and thank Minister Juan Carlos Navarro, who really has been the leader spearheading all of this, making this possible. Of course, Juan Carlos Monterrey. And of course, the entire Mi Ambiente team. If they're here, would you all please stand up, Mi Ambiente, so that we can acknowledge you. Come on, in the back, come on, I know you're seated. This is blood, sweat, and literal tears have gone into the Nature Summit series, and we're so appreciative of your help. I also, of course, want to thank Sandra and the Pro Echo Eswera team for being our strategic partner that has helped make this possible. Sandra, thank you for your leadership and for your team. We appreciate you. I want to thank EarthX for being the official co-host. I want to thank One Amazon, of course, for being our anchor sponsor that really helped make the Nature Summit at the scale and scope that really made so much of this possible. Obviously, I want to thank our other partners, Peace Through Trade, which really has stepped up time and time again to help really add value and add to the experiences that we're all going to be enjoying, including right after this as we head to our reception and dinner. UNDP, FAO, Worldview International Forum. I mean, this is source to source. Who else am I missing? One. Wetlands International, of course. This is so much of this was made possible because of partners who stepped up and uniquely added their value to making this such a special experience. But I think one thing that we're all excited about is that this is just the beginning. The focus with all of this, of course, was making connections, and that is the next stage of the Nature Summit series. From here, we are going to head to a reception in a little bit, which is right next door. It is in an extraordinary venue called Villa Anna, where we're going to have some opening drinks and then head to a dinner, followed by an extraordinary speakeasy experience. But again, please do me a favor and introduce yourself during the reception to someone that you don't know or recognize. Again, everyone here was brought in. Of course, there wasn't a ticket to attend this event. It was invitation only, and those of you in the room are here for a reason. If you don't know someone, find out why they're here, because it might add value to what you're committed to. So with that, I want to thank everyone for making this possible. Thank you. Now, this is what I was going to say. We're going to meet in the lobby of the hotel at about 6 o'clock. If you want to kind of walk over with us to Villa Anna, but also Villa Anna can be easily found on your Google Maps. Thank you.